Hello and welcome to the EcoCast. Today we'll be covering modernizing IT in state, local government, and educational organizations. Today's event is brought to you by Datrium, Netrix, Pivot3, Nutanix, and Unitrends. This event is produced by ActualTech Media, and I'm David Davis. I'm excited to be your moderator on today's event. Now, before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping we first need to cover. Prizes. We'll be handing out gift cards today to 3 lucky winners on today's event. I'll talk more about those gift cards and how to win them in just a moment. Next up, questions. We have a number of poll questions for you out there in the audience, and I'll be sharing the results of most of those poll questions with you. We appreciate your participation in those. It helps us to shape this event and future events as well. We also want this to be an educational event, so I encourage you to use the questions and answers panel in your audience console to ask all the questions that you have about the technologies that you're learning about on today's event. We get hundreds of questions on these events, but we'll be doing our best to answer every one of those, and I'll route most of the technology questions to today's presenters. Then there's social. We want this to be a social event. I'll talk more about the social activities that you can participate in just a moment. And finally, resources. Next to the questions and answers panel, there is a tab called Handouts. If you click on Handouts, you'll find a hand-selected resource from each of today's presenters, specifically pertaining to how their technology can help state, local government, and educational institutions. So make sure you download those PDF assets right there in the Handouts tab. You can do that right now. I also want to make sure that I mention that this is a completely live event, and as you can guess with live events, things sometimes can and might go wrong. Hopefully today will be a perfect event. If you do have trouble, I encourage you to first try a refresh on your web browser. 99% of the time that will resolve any technical problems. If that doesn't do it, I recommend that you try Chrome, because that's the recommended web browser for this webinar platform. And if that still doesn't do it, then post your technical problem in the questions box, and I'll do my best to help you out. Today's prizes are 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. You'll see in the schedule there in your audience console, if you click on the agenda at the bottom, exactly when and where we'll be giving out those gift cards, so make sure you stay tuned for those. You can find the full prize terms and conditions at events.actualtechmedia.com, or if you go to the Handouts tab, you can scroll down and click on Prize Terms and Conditions. Through the EcoCast and MegaCast event series, generous attendees have helped us to donate thousands of dollars to the selected charities you see on the screen here. So if you win a prize and you'd like to donate it to charity, we would love to help you do that. Now, social media, the hashtag for today is SLED EcoCast for state, local government, and educational EcoCast. I'll be monitoring that hashtag. I'll be tweeting on the hashtag, and I encourage you to do the same. Today's event is produced by ActualTech Media. You can follow us on Twitter, and also feel free to follow me. I am David M. Davis. Now, we've been doing a lot over on LinkedIn recently, and I encourage you to keep up to date with what we've been doing on LinkedIn. You can actually go to the Handouts tab right there, and there's a link that you can click on to follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date with all the latest in enterprise technology. And with that, I'm excited to introduce today's keynote presenter. That is Mr. Scott Lowe, CEO of ActualTech Media. Take it away, Scott.
Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media, and thank you for joining us for this Solutions for State and Local Government and Education EcoCast. This is an event that's really near and dear to my heart. My very first IT job was for a state government agency, a New York state government agency. Later in my career, I worked for a local government in Maryland. And far later in my career, I then worked as a chief information officer in higher education, private higher ed, for a number of years. And I've done a lot of consulting work in education since. I'm very familiar with the challenges that you face day in, day out when you go to work. Your challenges are very different, but also very similar to those in the commercial space. On the similarity front, you have the exact same needs in your organizations that commercial entities do. Now, they might call it things that are different. You don't have to worry about a profit motive and things like that necessarily, but you do have to worry about the bottom line. And on the differences front, whereas a commercial entity can look at things a little bit differently financially, you have a much more finite set of resources and a different accountability of those resources than some of your commercial counterparts. But again, you have similar needs. You have the exact same security challenges, for example, that your commercial counterparts face, and you have to be able to face those with a smaller, often, set of budgets and a smaller set of staff skills sometimes. You have leadership that wants to undertake digital transformation initiatives or other significant projects, but you don't always have the staff skills that are necessary to be able to do that. You may have staff that's wearing lots of hats. I know I always did. We have people that were, network people and security people and backup people and virtualization people, but they all were all the same person. And that's just reality for especially a lot of smaller entities, of which there are a number in this so-called SLED space, and that stands for state, local, education. SLED entities have the same challenges their commercial counterparts do, but they have to approach them far differently. And when I talk about things like budget accountability, if we look at state and local government and public education, there's an accountability to the local taxpayer that we have to keep in mind. And that's taken very seriously, especially, from an auditing standpoint. I've talked to people in, public institutions that have to balance down to literally the penny, and they will spend any amount of money it takes to make sure that that happens. And I'm not exaggerating. In the real world, as we call it sometimes, you may be able to get by if you're off by a penny, but that doesn't always work in the public space. So there's a very different set of challenges. And if we look at, as I was a CIO and I was looking at vendors like you're looking at today, there wasn't always an appreciation for the differences that our organizations faced over commercial organizations. There was this idea that there must be budget available if I can make a compelling enough case. And that wasn't always true. I rember more than a few times vendors walking in my door and saying, well, here's the price, and it was far beyond anything I could think about from a budget standpoint. And they felt that if they put together an appropriate enough total cost of ownership story, that they could probably make it work. And it just wasn't workable. So there's a very different method that has to be taken to be able to bring products into organizations, services into organizations as well. But as I said, you have the same sorts of security challenges, the same sorts of infrastructure challenges. You have to have performance-centric infrastructure. You have to have lots of capacity. You have to have stuff that's easy to use. And I think as we look at the future, especially in organizations like SLED entities, this ease of use argument is going to be critical. You need infrastructure and services that are push button, that are easily scalable, that allow you to increment the infrastructure scale as it makes sense for your organization. I have to do these huge buys every couple of years. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for vendors that have really a true understanding of what SLED entities' challenges are to be able to be successful in this space. And as you're watching this event, I think that the vendors that we were seeing on today's event all have very, very strong stories to tell around state, local government, and education. They all have, in fact, I've researched these entities pretty in depth for the work I do here at ActualTech Media, and every one of them truly understands the unique challenges that are faced across all the different verticals that they support. SLED is a unique vertical, but there's other ones that are unique as well that have challenges, and they've all taken great pains to make sure that they truly do understand what you need, and that really goes doubly for the very important work that you do every day as you help support our communities and you help educate our children. And I hope you have a great experience on today's event. I wish you the best in all of your technology projects and your efforts and in your digital transformation initiatives. And if you have any questions at all during the event today, please make sure you make liberal use of the questions pane in the control panel on your screen, because we want to make sure we hear from you so we can get all of your questions answered and make sure we can get your projects off to a great start. Thank you so much.
Great presentation there from Mr. Scott D. Lowe. Really insightful information into technology challenges at state, local government, educational institutions. We have some awesome solutions lined up here for you today to solve those unique challenges. Before we get into it with our first presenter, I have a few poll questions that I'd like to share with you. And the first one here is simply, what is your industry vertical? And so we're just looking to find out in a little bit more detail here. Is it education, local government, state or federal government, higher education? Feel free to select the industry vertical that corresponds to your organization. If you are not one of those that's listed there, then you don't have to answer the question, obviously. But we appreciate everyone who is one of those organizations represented there, hopefully, which is why you're on the event today, to answer the question. And I'm going to share the results with you. I can see those coming in already right now. All right, looks like most everyone has responded. Let me share the results with you. Looks like 35% are higher education, 27% state, federal government, 22% local government, 17% K-12 education. Awesome, awesome. Great results. Thank you, everyone who voted in that poll. We have another poll question here. It says, how many people work at your company? Could be your college or whatever it might be. I'm curious to find out the results of this one as well. So if you don't mind answering that, I will share the results with you of that poll as well. And while you do that, I'm going to respond to all of these awesome comments, questions that are coming in here from everyone. Hello from California. Hello from Chicago, Las Vegas. Kenneth says, good morning, everyone. Sang says, very warm San Diego. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for those great comments. Feel free to keep using that questions box as our presenters are speaking today, and post your technical questions. We're going to have some great Q&A sessions with each of today's presenters, so keep those comments and questions rolling on in. So the results of this poll should be on your screen now. It says, how many people work at your organization? 25% said 100 to 500. 17% said 2,500 to 5,000. 15% said 10,000 plus. And then a good representation all the way down to 125, or 1 through 25. So thank you, everyone, for voting in that poll question. And now this is a question that our first presenter actually asked me to ask you, the audience, before he presents, and that is, were you aware of hyperconverged infrastructure prior to this event? This helps us to better shape our presentations today. All right, so thank you everyone for the responses. Let me share the results of that. 76% said yes, they were aware of it. So thank you for that. 24% are not aware of it yet, but I am confident after today's event you will be very aware of hyperconvergence. So, and for those who said yes, I think you're going to learn a lot more about how hyperconvergence specifically can help SLED organizations. All right, and then last poll question for now. Last poll question before we get started with our first presentation. And that is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new technology for your organization? All right, looks like most everyone has voted. Thank you for those responses. I'm excited to introduce now our first presenter on today's SLED IT EcoCast. That is Mr. Mike Capone, Senior Director of Product and Solutions at Pivot3. Mike, are you with us?
I am indeed with everyone. David, can you hear me?
I can, yes, sir. Thanks for joining us. Take it away.
You bet, and thanks for everyone attending the EcoCast today. So I'm going to go over kind of an overview of what we see, some of the things going on, that are challenging you in the SLED space, and then do a little bit of an introduction to Pivot3 and what we have to offer, and then highlight 3 specific use cases that you might consider Pivot3 for in terms of modernizing your infrastructure. So I'm hoping you walk away with some things to think about that can help you in planning how you modernize your infrastructure to meet your specific organization's challenges. So first off, for those of you who might not be familiar with Pivot3, we're actually a well-established company in the hyperconverged infrastructure space. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas. So shout out to some of you who I saw who joined the EcoCast today from Texas. We also have an engineering facility in Houston as well. And we've been in market for well over 10 years now, and shipping hyperconverged infrastructure for over 10 years. And we have a lot of intellectual property, innovation, and patents in the areas of software-defined storage, which hyperconverged infrastructure is based upon. And we do some really unique things to deliver a high level of fault tolerance and resilience, deliver a high level of performance, and then we've got some unique capabilities in the area of management that I'm going to speak to, where we employ a policy-based management approach to managing performance, data protection, security, that can save you a significant amount of time as you manage your infrastructure. We have systems installed all over the world, as you see, and I'm going to talk about a use case that you may not be familiar with for applying hyperconverged, and that's video surveillance and security. We're the only hyperconverged supplier in market who has a solution optimized for the needs of video surveillance. So that's just a little bit about us. So what we increasingly see going on, and we see this particularly in your type of companies, is we see the individuals who are responsible for what you might call the traditional data center sort of application environments also starting to become more responsible for the infrastructure that supports the physical security aspects of a university or of a city and such. And as you see here, there's a stat. By 2023, IoT data, which video surveillance is the dominant form of IoT data these days, is going to make up more than half of the data sphere. And 65% of that, as I mentioned, will come from video surveillance. And so as I go out, and talk to companies, I get that validated in that the people responsible for the data center are saying, gosh, I've been asked now to kind of figure out, what's the right way to take and modernize the infrastructure that we use to support our video surveillance and security applications. And boy, what's the best way to approach that? So I want to tee that up, is sort of a key premise here going forward, because Pivot 3 does have some unique technology that can help in that regard. Okay. I had David, ask that question about, how many people were aware of what hyperconverged infrastructure was, to kind of gauge how much time I spent on this, and I saw that 76% of you who took the poll were familiar with it. So for just that quarter of you who aren't, hyperconverged infrastructure is actually the fastest growing form of infrastructure technology out there. It's growing at about a 45% compound annual growth rate, according to Gartner and IDC and Forrester, leading industry analysts who track that type of stuff. And what it does is it's a different way to deploy infrastructure, where instead of deploying separate servers, separate storage systems like SAN systems or NAS systems, and then tying that together with a storage network and virtualizing it all with something like VMware, you take and buy what we refer to as these hyperconverged appliances. And these hyperconverged appliances combine the compute, the storage, the virtualization, the storage networking into a simple to deploy appliance type model, where you just cluster these appliances together, and you can run your virtualized applications on those appliances, as well as all the storage in those appliances gets pooled together to form a shared storage pool or a SAN system. And this type of technology is growing fast because it's been proven to be able to be deployed faster, be simpler to deploy, manage, and then have more agility, because it's simpler to scale your compute and your storage together as your needs change. And then a lot of customers are using it as the basis to get into a hybrid cloud or a private cloud strategy as well. So if you're not super familiar with hyperconverged infrastructure, I think today will provide a good way to get introduced to it, and then certainly go off and do a little bit more research on it, or come talk to us and be happy to educate you a bit more. Now, from a Pivot 3 standpoint, Pivot 3 provides these appliances, and these appliances have our Pivot 3 hyperconverged software platform pre-integrated on them. We refer to that Pivot 3 hyperconverged software platform as Acuity, and Acuity we believe is unique in market because at its core it has what we refer to as an intelligence engine. And this intelligence engine uses this policy-based management paradigm to take and simplify management complexity. I'm going to show a couple of examples of that. It's priority aware in that you as a user get to tell the system what application workloads are more important than others. And so if there are points of contention for resources that occur in the course of a normal day, the system knows I'm going to prioritize what I've been told are the more important applications so that those are guaranteed a certain level of performance and meet your SLAs. And there's a lot of automation and artificial intelligence and such that this intelligence engine has in it, and so that it simplifies the management of performance, security, data protection, data management. So once you set these policies, there's a lot of stuff that goes on under the covers that you don't have to worry about, and it's all based upon the system understanding what performance levels need to be met, what security levels need to be met, et cetera. And so it's all about simplifying management for you, but yet ensuring that your SLAs are met for the applications and in the order of priority that you have for them based upon what's most important to your business. And so this intelligence engine is something that is unique to Pivot 3 in market, and so we have a lot of innovation, a lot of IP in this area. Now, this intelligence engine and our hyperconverged software platform also takes advantage of an architecture that we see as being optimized for performance. It's a multi-tier distributed architecture. You see on the picture here, we leverage multiple storage media types, memory for caching. We utilize PCIe NVMe flash, both as a cache, read-write cache, and a persistent tier of storage. And so we reserve that or leverage that more for latency sensitive, high response time applications. And then we have appliances that utilize both SSDs or hard drives, depending upon the application performance and storage capacity requirements. So this intelligence engine is able to understand that, gee, I've got multiple storage media types in the system, and so based upon the performance requirements, the data protection requirements that you've defined by setting policies, it's going to take and place blocks of data on these different storage media types and do all of this movement in real time as workload requirements change in order to ensure that those SLAs are achieved. The other thing that we do that helps from a performance standpoint is you've got these individual nodes that you cluster together, and the software takes and pools all the resources from all the nodes, cache, drives, network bandwidth, et cetera, into one big pool of resources that all your applications, virtualized applications, regardless of what node they run on, get to take advantage of. And so that significantly boosts performance versus just having the resources in the node or the appliance that virtualized application is running on be the basis of what of the resources that particular application has access to. So intelligence engine, architected for performance, utilizing multiple media types, pooling resources, is all geared towards simplifying management for you, but yet at the same time, delivering the performance that you need, based upon the applications that you want to run on this hyperconverged system. So let me talk about 3 different use cases now, that you might consider investigating, Pivot 3 for, to help you as you look at modernizing your infrastructures. And the first one is what I call confidently consolidating, multiple application workloads. Initially, hyperconverged infrastructure was deployed for siloed sort of environments, like VDI is kind of the classic environment that hyperconverged systems were initially deployed for, and that was because people were more apt to stand up a unique, specific infrastructure for VDI because they were concerned about just deploying it on their existing infrastructure because they wanted to make sure that the VDI project ran smoothly. But now as as hyperconverged has become more accepted in the industry as a infrastructure based upon successful deployments and such, we've seen companies say, hey, hyperconverged is great, saving me money, easier to deploy, easier to manage. Hey, I want to consolidate more of my application workloads on a single hyperconverged environment to reap all these benefits. But what you need to do that is some way to take and effectively manage running multiple application workloads on it. And so in Pivot 3, we have this notion of this intelligence engine, and that intelligence engine has this advanced quality of service capability associated with it. So what you do when you provision a volume or a data store or a VM on the system, you assign it one of 5 predefined performance policies that set an IOPS and a throughput target and a floor and a not to exceed latency target. And those 5 policies are classified into 3 levels: mission critical, business critical, non-critical. So say for what you consider your most mission critical, performance intensive application, you never want it to experience a glitch. You say, okay, that might be an order database, or it might be some sort of financial application in the university, or maybe it's a registration system or something. So you set that up as mission critical. Maybe you've got some VDI power users that you consider the next most important, and then you've got some sort of development database that you're working on. You put that as non-critical. So now if the system has the resources available for all those application workloads, everybody gets what they need. But if there's a period of contention that exists, it will automatically throttle back resources that that development database, the non-critical applications are using, in order for that what you assigned as mission critical to not drop below that IOPS throughput floor or exceed its latency target. So this gives you a really simple mechanism to run multiple mixed application workloads on this hyperconverged system and ensure that the most important ones get the guaranteed performance, the guaranteed user experience that you want to deliver to your user or customer environment. Okay? And this is just a couple of screenshots here that show the policy-based approach to this. We have a live demo that we run every week that I've got a link to at the end of this, and that you can get to via our website, where you can see a 30-minute live demo run, and our technical marketing person goes into more detail on this. But on the left here, there's these 5 policies that you pick from, and apply to your volume at creation. The same thing is true for security. If you want to take and do encryption, on a volume at creation, you just click a policy assignment for that, and then click that you want to do a key assignment to that. And then on the right there, you can actually schedule these policies to be changed. If you know at a predetermined point in time that a particular application is going to spike from a performance standpoint, you can take and change it, say, from policy 5 to policy 1 at that predetermined point in time, and then drop it back later. So that gives you a lot of flexibility, for how you can take and meet the performance, the changing performance requirements of applications as they might change. So that's one great use case for us because of this policy-based management, this quality of service capability. If you want to consolidate multiple mixed application workloads on common infrastructure, get rid of silos of infrastructure. Second, and I referred to this as being a great use case for hyperconverged, and that's desktop virtualization. And key considerations there are you want to ensure that your infrastructure contributes to delivering the optimum user experience. Normally that's a function of the underlying storage. Does it have the right level of performance? You also want to the success of your VDI project could be dependent upon how much money you have to spend on the infrastructure you deploy to support that. So being able to support the number of users that you need and the least amount of infrastructure footprint is a key consideration. And then you want to scale predictably as well, because maybe you start out with 100 virtual desktop users and then you want to scale in increments of 100 or 50 after that, and you want to know that, hey, every time I add a node or an appliance to my hyperconverged environment, I can support X number more users. So from a Pivot 3 standpoint, because of that utilization of NVMe flash, the ability to pool all those resources to deliver a high level of performance to all the virtualized applications on any node in the system, we've demonstrated that we can support a much higher user density than other hyperconverged systems on the market, and we do that utilizing a tool called Login VSI that all of us storage vendors and hyperconverged vendors use to simulate different virtual desktop user profile types. And then that policy-based management approach that I showed you can be used to take and ensure that your most mission-critical virtual desktop users get guaranteed performance and don't suffer from contention from other applications that you may be running on it. So VDI, great use case to consider. And then the last one that I kind of teased you on early on is looking at hyperconverged to address your physical security requirements. So Pivot 3 has a product in our portfolio and a optimized version of our software platform that's optimized around the unique requirements of video data. Because video data is unique, it's got 4 to 5 times the write rate of normal IT sort of workloads, and if you can't support ingesting video, at that sort of write rate, you're going to have frame loss, and that means image degradation, video loss, and you can't have that if you're trying to take and deliver public safety, student safety, employee safety, through video surveillance and security applications. And what you can also do with Pivot 3 Hyperconverged is you could not only run your video management software applications like Milestone, Genetec, ISS, etc., on the hyperconverged infrastructure, but you could also run your video analytics. There's increased usage of video analytics for recognizing patterns or doing identity management and such that improves response time, but also intrusion detection, access control, the variety of applications you have to deliver physical security across buildings, campuses, and such can all now be consolidated on a single infrastructure versus you having separate servers and network video recorders and storage systems and such across your environment. So I would encourage you to look at Pivot 3 if you're at the point where you need to modernize your video surveillance and physical security infrastructure. And then lastly, this is just a depiction here that shows that we have a wide range of deployment options, different form factor appliances, different capacity points, compute points in these appliances, the ability to support GPUs in these appliances. We actually have a ruggedized appliance as well if you have a harsh environment that you need to put the system into. And we scale to meet a wide range of requirements. You could have anywhere from a 4 terabyte appliance to you could have multiple petabytes in a single rack. So kind of a wide range of requirements that you can meet here with the different deployment options. So kind of a fast-paced walkthrough there of Pivot 3, David, and hopefully I gave you some food for thought on 3 different use cases, from consolidating multiple workloads to VDI to video surveillance, that you could look at applying us to. And if you want to learn more, a great way to do it is we have a weekly live demo. If you just go to our website, right on the front page of the website, there's a registration box there for that weekly demo series. And then you can see the user interface and see a little bit more of the system in action view of things. So David, I'll stop right there. It looks like I'm about 2 minutes over, and see if we've got any questions.
Yes, absolutely, Mike. Yeah, great presentation. We do have some questions for you. Let's see, while I ask those questions, I'm going to pop up this poll question for the audience that says, what additional information would you like about the Pivot 3 solution? And this is a multi-select question, so feel free to select there as many as you would like. If you have a question about hyperconvergence, Mike is the person to ask, so get your questions in now. Let's see, first question that came in, David is asking, and I'm not sure, you might need to get back to him on this, is your offering FBI CJIS compliant?
Yes, it is. It's CJIS compliant. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Another question, Khaled is asking, what hypervisors does Pivot 3 support?
Oh, boy, Colette, thanks for asking that, because that's something I forgot to mention as I went through the overview. Our hyperconverged software platform runs on VMware ESXi, and so you can take advantage of the vCenter, for example, as your management environment for the entire hyperconverged environment, and then you also get to take advantage of all of the other vSphere software suite capabilities as well.
Okay, perfect. Another question, Dan is asking, this is optimized for video. What about broadcast video applications where multiple streams are being handled?
Yes, we actually excel in that area of ingesting multiple streams simultaneously. We have a very unique way that we multipath data from the ingest source, be it a video management software application or broadcast server or something, into the system, and then write it out to nodes in parallel. We pre-map where the data is going, so we know where everything's placed. So yes, that is one area that we excel in, and with some of the video management software companies that we partner with and certify with, we've been certified by them as achieving the highest level of ingest rates versus other types of storage systems they're familiar with.
Okay, excellent. Chris is asking, how many nodes would you estimate I need to support 200 virtual machines? And I'm sure it varies, of course, we'd have to learn more about the virtual machine, sizes and such, but do you have any suggestions?
Well, it's a it depends answer, based upon what type of application workloads those are. I mean, the best thing to do there is to contact us. I'd hate to throw out a number just on the phone here without knowing the requirements of the VMs. We have a sizer that we use, where you essentially you put in the number of VMs you've got, a little bit of information on the VMs, and then it spits out what your options are for number of nodes. Could be hybrid nodes, could be all flash nodes. So I hate to give you the "it depends" answer, but it is one where it truly does. So please reach out to us, and in a quick conversation, we could probably give you a spitball.
Excellent. Let's see. Another question here: what do you use for data protection and DR with Pivot 3? I mean, they're asking, does it work with, for example, Veeam or Zerto?
Mm-hmm. Yes, good question as well. The Acuity Hyperconverged software platform does have native asynchronous replication in it, and so that's one mechanism you can use. We also have a Acuity Cloud Edition that actually has a instance of our Acuity software that can run up in AWS, runs as an Amazon machine image, and so the replication of data is coordinated between our infrastructure on-prem and AWS, and then we are fully validated with Veeam, Zerto, Commvault, your popular backup and recovery and DR type products, and also like workload mobility type applications. Yep.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all the time we have for our live questions, live Q&A session, but a really great presentation, Mike. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
You bet. Thanks for the questions, folks, and appreciate you attending and considering Pivot 3. And I'll go in and look at any assigned questions. I've got 2, so if some of you have asked them and didn't get them answered, I'll be online here for a few minutes answering those.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. For more information on Pivot 3, of course, visit their website. And in the Handouts tab there's actually a case study on how Pivot 3 helped the University of Central Florida. So I recommend that you download that PDF and check it out for yourself to learn how they helped a public university. And I have to admit now that I made a mistake, but you're going to like this. You're going to like this because I said there was 3 gift cards that we were giving out today. Well, I accidentally put in that we would give out 1 gift card after every presenter today, so that's 5 gift cards we'll be giving out. So the first gift card that we're announcing is an Amazon $500 gift card, and it's going out to Eric Bird from California. Congratulations, Eric Bird from California. We've got 4 more gift cards to give out still on today's event, so make sure you stay tuned for those drawings after each presenter. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter on today's event. That is Mr. Greg Clayman, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Datrium. Greg, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Clayman. I work in product marketing at Datrium, and we're here to talk about transforming IT. I know a lot of you are doing that, and that a lot of you are under pressure to deliver instant outcomes. Next slide, please. So we all live in an instant economy. Companies like Amazon and Google have set expectations with consumers that they can get things instantly. Obviously, this is particularly poignant in education and in government, where people are, expecting government services instantly, and obviously students show up at a university and they expect everything to happen immediately. So this instant economy and instant gratification expectations of users is creating pressure on IT to obviously provide applications instantly and provide data instantly. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to refresh here and see if I can get it back. Nope, still not there. Okay, so in order to provide these instant gratification and provide instant apps and data, really you need to move to multi-cloud because that's the way everyone else is doing it. In order to provide instant apps and data, you need a virtualization plane to deliver consistent applications across clouds, and you need a consistent data plane to provide instant data across clouds. Next slide, please. So on the virtualization plane, that one's sort of solved between VMware and Kubernetes. That provides a consistent plane for virtualizing applications across clouds. Next slide. But on the data plane side, there really isn't a consistent data plane. And why is that? You can hit the next slide. Basically, the reason for that is data silos are stopping data from being instantly available. If you think about what data is required, obviously you need to store it on primary storage so it's available for applications. You need to back it up. You need to protect it from disasters and bring it back. You need to encrypt your data to avoid cyber attacks. And because you're on a multi-cloud, you have to have WAN optimization and data mobility across clouds. And today in the data center, that's 5 different products. And those products don't really talk to each other. And then when you move to the cloud, like an Amazon or Azure, you get 5 new silos. And those don't talk to each other. And obviously the silos in the cloud don't talk to the silos on-prem. So the net result of this is you end up with 5 different silos, or maybe more, 10 if you're on multiple clouds, and you can't move your data between these, and you can't obviously achieve instant data across clouds. Next slide, please. Datrium Automatrix converges those 5 data functions into a single platform. So primary, backup, DR, encryption, and mobility, all into a single platform that allows the data to be portable and gives enterprises and government and education a single experience across on-prem and across clouds. Next slide, please. This multi-cloud data plane allows you to leverage any cloud. It works seamlessly with VMware and Kubernetes. And there's an orchestration product that will move workloads across clouds. And then you can create single data policies that are then enforced from the time you first use your data until you terminate it, again, across clouds. Next slide, please. So these are the products that make up the Automatrix platform. There's 3, DVX, Cloud DVX, and Control Shift. So DVX operates in private clouds and on cloud service providers. Cloud DVX operates on the public cloud, has all the same functions. And then Control Shift is an orchestrator that allows you to move workloads between those DVXs and Cloud DVX. And that's okay. So let's dive into the first one, which is DVX. So DVX is really software-defined converged infrastructure. It's made up of a cluster of compute nodes that are running Datrium software and a cluster of data nodes that are also running Datrium software on hardware. The collection of these provides customers the ability to run mixed workloads. They can dedicate compute nodes to certain workloads, but they can all operate on a single data node cluster. You can add new compute nodes to scale your performance linearly, and it's all the storage management is automated by the DVX software. DVX gets deployed in 2 different ways. The first way is a software-defined hyperconverged infrastructure, and that's where you have the data nodes and the compute nodes sold together as a package. And then it's also provisioned as split provision storage, where you just buy the data nodes from Datrium and you use your own hosts or your own compute nodes where you apply the Datrium software to those nodes. Our customers combined all of their different technologies into a single cluster using Automatrix and DVX. Usually you can run multiple hypervisors, VMware, Docker, and Red Hat. You can run, all of our customers run multiple applications. It can be SAP and VDI and SQL Server and Oracle all on a single cluster. And then often you can run modern applications like Spark and Hadoop and Mongo and Postgres. And then it also works with DevOps type frameworks like Kubernetes. Next slide, please. The DVX also provides world-class performance because we keep all of the data on the host. Every read is local. And so we ran IOMark benchmark so that you can compare Datrium DVX performance with other products. And we basically had 10 times more VMs. We were 5 times faster than the fastest all-flash array. And we had 1/3 the latency of both all-flash and hyperconverged. Also, what allows us to provide instant recovery is built-in backup. So the backup features are built into the product, unlike anyone else in the industry. So basically, there's no backup window. You don't have to stun VMs. We can take snapshots instantly with redirect on write. You can search your snapshots globally across clouds to find the snapshots that you want. And then you can recover those instantly because it's all in the single system. So all you do is take your VM and point it at your new snapshot and bring it back. And you're up and running instantly. There's no copying back from a separate system, and you can vault all of your snapshots off to Amazon, and they'll be saved on S3 for very efficient, cost-effective long-term storage. Control Shift is the DR orchestrator that allows you to move workloads between the clouds. It has built-in runbook automation, so you set up your runbook and then it executes it, and then uniquely also does compliance checks on that runbook test to check things like networks. Is your plan going to actually execute appropriately? And if there's changes in the network or changes in the stack in either the host side or the storage side that are going to cause your plan to fail, we will let you know that ahead of time so you can fix it. And this allows customers to move workloads instantly between DVXs and between DVXs and VMware Cloud on AWS so that they can basically instantly recover from disasters or cybercrime attacks. It's a very simple interface. This is important, obviously, for customers. Modern UI allows you to move your workloads, and it's a simple, common universal UI across all of your clouds. So you only go to one place to do your management. So our customers consistently gain performance. They can recover 10 times faster. They get basically zero storage management, and they get a 5-month ROI payback. So let's talk about a couple examples in the state and local government area. So the first one is San Francisco Public Utilities. So this is the organization that provides water from the Hetch Hetchy water system in the Sierra Nevada mountain range and brings that water about 300 miles to the San Francisco Bay Area, serving about 2.7 million people with water and generating power along the way. They have about 2,300 employees, and they have a $1 billion operating budget every year. So pretty sizable. So their challenges were really their performance was not meeting their expectations. They were spending a lot of time managing their LUNs and their storage systems, and they were coming up on a refresh, and they had very tight budget limits. So when they moved to Datrium, they basically got a 6 times performance increase. Most importantly, they were able to recover 20 times faster than they could before because of that built-in backup. They had a 50 to 60% lower TCO, and they reduced their management time by 80%. So they increased performance, reduced the IT management time, saved money, and most importantly, we're able to provide kind of instant application performance and instant recovery times for their users. Another example is West Valley City. This is a city in Utah, just west of Salt Lake City, second biggest city in the state, about 130,000 residents, and a number of large companies are based there. So with them, really what they wanted to improve was their data protection and disaster recovery capabilities. They also always wanted to, like most customers, go faster and reduce their IT management time. So the big win with them was they were able to recover about 100 times faster, 8 times better RPO, their performance went up 12x, and they reduced their IT admin time by 70%. And really, at the end of the day, it was peace of mind. Their return on investment was really that they avoided $1 million lost wages because now they could basically recover from a disaster in a matter of hours versus weeks. And obviously, when you're a city and you're providing things like fire and police, services, those are, most needed when the emergencies happen. And so it's very important, obviously, to recover quickly so that you can have your fire and police people back up in a matter of an hour if you incur some type of a disaster in your data center, right? That's the time when everyone's going to be calling the police and you're going to need the fire department deployed. So it was a huge win for the city, and also it allowed them to really deliver not just instant applications but instant recovery from failures. And the final one is University of Maryland. Founded in 1856, they have 41,000 students across 282 programs. They are full university undergrad, master's, and doctoral students. And this particular department was the Agriculture and Resource Economics Department. And they also were very focused on minimizing downtime, increasing VDI performance, and reducing storage. They saw a 30 times improvement in RTO. They were able to move their offsite backup to AWS. They got a 10 times performance increase, and they reduced their storage admin time to 0. So with that, I'll wrap up. So that's really the Automatrix platform allows state and local government and education institutions to really provide these instant outcomes to their customers and their users. They're able to get a very good ROI. They're able to move much faster and recover much faster and improve mitigate their risk of downtime and security cyber threats. And they do that through a combination of Datrium products, DVX, Cloud DVX, and Control Shift.
Great presentation, Greg.
Thank you.
So, we learned a lot about Datrium and how you all are helping state, local, and educational institutions. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. Let me pop up this poll question for the audience. It says, what additional information would you like about the Datrium solution? So I'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So the first one that came in here, Ken is asking about ransomware. So, let's say that a college perhaps gets infected with ransomware and they're using Datrium. How does, what's unique about Datrium that makes ransomware recovery or some aspect of it easier?
Yep. So obviously, because we have built-in backup and your snapshots are all captured in the same system in a very efficient way, it's very easy and very fast to find the snapshot. So, for example, once you identify when you were infected, and often it's months ago, right? It's usually not like once you figure out you had a ransomware attack, the actual infection usually happened a long time ago. But once you what you do is you can basically go back through your snapshots and look at them one at a time and figure out when that infection started. And then basically you go back one more day, grab that snapshot, and you can recover instantly and bring your services back up to that date and time. So Datrium and DVX is uniquely positioned to do that, both in terms of because of the number of snapshots we can save very space efficiently. The ability to search those globally is also unique. And then the ability to instantly, once you find that point in time that you want, we're not copying data back. So basically, as soon as you identify it, you can be back up and running. And so that is obviously very important in a ransomware situation. And Datrium is very unique in that. And if you go to the Datrium website, we actually have a white paper about our ransomware capabilities.
Very nice. Let's see, another question here. Does Datrium replace existing data protection and DR solutions? I mean, is your data protection DR, is it so advanced that most companies are seeing that they don't need a traditional, say, backup solution?
Yeah, so it's mixed because we are really only backing up the DVX system itself. So most of our customers back up their virtual environments running on DVX using DVX. So for those products, they don't need backup.
Got it. Okay. And I know that Datrium is really unique, when it comes to, say I have a traditional virtual environment with a shared, NAS or SAN. If you were going to come in and replace that, can you kind of describe exactly, where does Datrium fit in that picture?
Sure. So the vast, because we have primary storage, and you saw from all our customer case studies, right, that one of the biggest benefits our customers get is performance. So what they'll usually do is they'll take their virtual environment and they'll migrate it over to DVX, obviously using something like vMotion. And as they move their workloads onto the DVX system, it'll just show up as VMs and they'll start running their applications there. And then they can set up their backup policies, how often they want to take a snapshot, how long they want to retain them. And so basically, as they migrate their workloads over from their previous virtual environment to Datrium, it's automatically, they usually get a performance increase and they take care of all their data protection needs. And then once the migration is done, they would turn off the old system. So we would almost always replace their existing virtual infrastructure. And a lot of our customers, it's the classic expansion story, right? They might start out with one workload. It might be VDI, it might be SQL Server, it might be Oracle, might be SAP, and then over time they'll just keep adding more workloads because it's so easy to use. That's a very traditional classic three-tier architecture. If it's not Datrium and so they'll system, then we can't back it up. We have a lot of customers. So for those systems, you would still need traditional third-party backup products, public utilities, but for as well as basically about 100% of our customers in Maryland today started out with one workload, built-in data protection features to protect over time, understanding that, oh wow, now I see all the benefits. And now I see also that I can virtualize some applications that I didn't think I could virtualize before because of the Datrium performance. A lot of times those are things like SQL Server and Oracle.
Very nice, very nice. Let's see. Another question here. You talked about instant recovery. They're saying, it sounds kind of unbelievable. It sounds almost too good to be true. How do you really accomplish instant recovery?
Right. So really, it's because it's a single system, right? So what we do is we take the DVX data nodes and the compute nodes, and there's a space where all of your virtual workloads are running. Let's call that like a user space. And then there's a separate space that we call Snap Store that is not accessible to any of the VMs. It's basically a separate part of the system that no application and no user can see. So as you take snapshots, that's where they're saved. You have to go in as an administrator to see the snapshots, and then you can. But they're on the same, in the same data too. So in order to get that data back, you have to copy it back, and that takes a long time because we're not moving data, we're not copying data. The snapshots are right there on the same disks. So when you want to recover, you can do it basically instantly. Excellent.
Yeah, that really makes it instant and possible. So very innovative stuff that you all are doing. Let's see, probably the last question we have time for here. You mentioned data security, and I know that's very important to the organizations on the event today. I'm curious, how does Automatrix help with that?
Sure. So we have Automatrix has this thing called blanket encryption. And because we are doing, we basically encrypt the data as soon as it is written out of the virtual machine. And so we also do that encrypting right after we do the dedupe and the compression. So we don't lose all the efficiency gains. So when there's a write, the data comes out, we compress it, we do the fingerprinting, we do the fingerprinting is effectively the dedupe. We do some inline dedupe, and then we encrypt it, and then we write it. And so because of that, there's really no trade-off because we're also doing all that on the host as we inline as we do where we have lots of CPU cycles. The data that's even going into the local memory is already encrypted and deduped and compressed. So we get all of the efficiency on the host. We also obviously are encrypted as we go across the network, and then we're encrypted when we land on the data nodes for long-term storage. So it's an extremely secure solution because we're encrypting it as soon as it gets written out of the VM. And it's also very efficient because we're doing the dedupe and the compression before we encrypt. And then also because we're doing it on the host, we have all the performance advantages of scaling that out. So we can add more hosts if there's any, as you need more performance. So you kind of get the best of all worlds, right? All the traditional solutions, you either do it on the host, but then you lose all the efficiencies because often the dedupe and the compression are done after that, or you're in the clear until you get to the storage system, and that's obviously a security risk. Then you get good efficiency and compression, but you lose the security. Your data's in the clear until it goes across the network. So you really get the best of both worlds with Autometric's blanket encryption in that you get the security of encryption end to end, but you don't pay a performance or a data efficiency trade-off when you do that. And obviously, as you said, that's very important for education as well as state and local government, and a high percentage of our customers in that space use blanket encryption.
Perfect. Well, Greg, that's all the time we have, I'm afraid, in our live, question and answer session here. But it's been really, really insightful, and it's a great presentation that you gave today. So thank you for being on the event.
Thank you for having me.
And for more information on Datrium, make sure you check out the handout that's available there in your console. It's about the San Francisco Public Utility Commission, and it's a case study where Datrium was able to step in and solve their technology challenges. And now it's time for our next prize giveaway. We have another Amazon $500 gift card. This one is going out to Luis Gomez from North Carolina. Congratulations, Luis Gomez. We've got 3 more gift cards to still give away on today's event. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tim Wallace, Head of Public Sector Solutions Marketing at Nutanix. Tim, are you on?
I am. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for being here. Take it away.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on the call today. As you said, I head up Public Sector Industry Solutions at Nutanix, cover both federal as well as state, local, and education. Looking at the topic of trends in state and local, I thought it might be interesting for us to sort of just look at where money is being spent. So this is some data from eRepublic and the Center for Digital Government that looks at the somewhat $107 billion that are currently budgeted by U.S. local and state and local entities and for IT, and looking at sort of the big areas where the money's being spent. And we're certainly seeing this in our efforts. Education is a very strong market for us, but also health and human services. We're seeing a lot of investment in those areas to deliver services to the population at large. Also, I thought it might be interesting as well to look at the priorities. So the Center for Digital Government surveyed state and local CIOs, and you can see very strong commonality. I think it's easy for people to say cybersecurity is number one. It tends to top the list every year. And also in the state side, we see a little bit more on shared services. The states look at trying to create economies and reduce redundancy across departments and create IT centers of excellence to run particular IT resources that other state agencies can share. Talent and hiring competent and retaining talent is a big issue for states, as we find, particularly in the government side, obviously you're competing with commercial entities, and finding talent to bring in and run the IT infrastructure, it can be a daunting task. And some of our customers have reported that, they bring people in, they train them up, and then they have to figure out how to retain that talent from being courted by commercial entities. But that's an ongoing challenge for our government customers. In the more the city and county level, we see citizen experience being a big factor as states and as cities and counties try to open up more of their government resources to the public and create mechanisms for people to interact instead of, waiting in that long DMV line as they might have done in previous years. One of the other topics I wanted to mention was under the cities area was the smarter infrastructure and Internet of Things. And this has been a growing area across, particularly in the cities, as you see the growth of smart devices, sensors, cameras, and creating mountains and mountains of data that require additional IT resources to cover. The interesting part is, even though the priorities are ordered in the previous slide, the spending doesn't always match up with that. So cybersecurity is always in the forefront of people's minds, but in terms of spending, we're seeing more spending in areas like business intelligence and analytics, and also cloud computing, disaster recovery. Even though cybersecurity is important, it's kind of like the weather. Everyone talks about it, but it's still a hard problem to solve, and so it requires ongoing focus. But yet there are other tactical needs that organizations focus on. I think in the business intelligence and analytics area, there's certainly, with the growth of data, with the growth of smart devices, Internet of Things, there is a growing need to have intelligence around analyzing that data. Now, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. On education, I didn't have a survey to choose from, but I kind of picked some things that we see in across educational entities. Again, cybersecurity, data protection, protecting student data and organizational data, and also protecting online safety. I have in my list collaboration and personalized learning. As organizations look at different teaching methods and collaboration across academic institutions, online safety of those students is in the forefront. We're also seeing growing use of different teaching methods and incorporating technology like augmented reality, virtual reality in those environments, but also mobility, mobile desktops, both VDI and desktops as a service that help promote that anytime, anywhere access to education facilities or education mechanisms. Now, again, netting all that out, what I see is continued pressure on spending across all government entities, continued pressure to do more efficiently, to reduce the IT costs, but at the same time provide more services, more agility, more reliability, and also provide that consumer-like experience. As people are used to interacting on smart devices, smartphones, etc., they want to have that same kind of experience in interacting with government, to whether it's filing a building permit or paying your taxes, etc. Now, getting a little bit more prescriptive around where Nutanix fits into this, one of the big trends, and I think it's probably reflected in most of the other speakers today, is around data center modernization, looking at that traditional IT infrastructure and modernizing that. Now, again, I think it's fairly common across the different speakers today, using hyperconverged infrastructure as a mechanism to achieve that modernization. And this is where Nutanix started. We've been in business for 10 years, or a leader by Gartner and Forrester in this space, but our founders worked at places like Google and Facebook and found that to really achieve scalability and incremental expansion, they needed to rethink the data center, and it didn't really need to have the islands of automation, especially that have traditional persisted in data centers. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think I've been in this business a long time. I worked at Sun for a number of years and at Oracle, and saw the growth of servers and standalone servers and applications running on a single server, and then supported by storage area networks or network attached storage. That while it was a great technology in its day, over time we found that it didn't particularly support the needs of the organizations in terms of scalability. So there was a need to really rethink that. And with the kind of technologies that grew out of the development at places like Google and Facebook, we developed the Nutanix Hyperconverged Infrastructure model. Now, again, with that model, after in hyperconverging the data center and modernizing that, certainly influenced by the growth of cloud technologies and cloud architectures as a viable mechanism to found data centers on. Again, with public cloud, we see that that rapid time to operations, pick up the dial in to give a credit card. You can very quickly get access to IT resources in the cloud. You can pay for what you use and when you need it. You know that the infrastructure is going to be updated, so you don't have to worry about that necessarily in a public cloud environment. And you get that one-click simplicity that hiding all the unnecessary details perhaps from the administrator. Now, this presents a kind of a dilemma, and I'm going to show a couple of slides here that'll bracket that. Now, and we look at the cloud model and actually expect to bring that into the data center, bring that into private entities, because public cloud is not always the best option. And I'm going to go into that a bit here. One of our customers, and I think they were represented on the program a few weeks ago when my colleague Steve Kaplan talked about ROI, but they're a very large county here in the Bay Area. One of the things we did with them early on was looking at the cost of maintaining their physical servers versus moving to a virtualized server environment with Nutanix. And the reality was that in their data center, they had a lot of what was called projectware. Each new project required its own set of servers, and so they ended up having just growth within the data center to support organic growth as new projects came along. But looking at that investment and looking at what we could do to trim that investment, we did a study of the cost of maintaining physical servers versus moving to a virtualized Nutanix environment, and really drove those numbers out for them. And again, ROI studies are good data points. They don't necessarily provide the only mechanism, but they do provide some data-driven decisioning. On the other side, they had to consider whether they would move to public cloud. And this is obviously a cherry-picked slide here that favors Nutanix. And the point was, this wasn't for all their use cases. They have use cases that fit very well in public cloud. But in their case, for this type of VDI project, they did an analysis of what it would take to run it in a public cloud versus running it in a private cloud based on Nutanix. And the point here is that they didn't have the dynamic workloads that really tend to fit well in cloud environments. So they decided, through the analysis, that it really kind of leaned toward operating it on premise with using those CapEx dollars as a trade-off versus the OpEx laden expense of public cloud. So what we see with customers is this sort of three-step journey. One is modernizing their IT infrastructure, and this is with HCI, then building what we term an enterprise cloud of offering IT as a service. And this can be really the prescriptive approach is to do this internally within the organization that lets you make the informed choices of whether you would run your applications on premise or run them in a public cloud or some combination of the two, or multiple clouds along with on-premise computing. And this is how our products are organized toward that. The Nutanix Core was really that foundation set of technologies that we started 10 years ago with the Acropolis OS and as the underlying operating environment to drive a data fabric across the infrastructure. Nutanix Prism, which provides that management plane of one-click access to really see what's going on in your organization and to manage that from a very simple, easy to use one pane of glass. And then our hypervisor. Now we at Nutanix don't require that you use our hypervisor. We're with VMware ESX, so we can use multiple different hypervisors depending on the customer's demands, but we do provide a hypervisor with our product. So on top of that, our next layer for implementing your own private cloud within your on-premise environment, we've added additional capabilities. Nutanix Flow provides microsegmentation to provide security between VMs and software-designed firewalls. Prism Pro gives additional abilities on top of the core Prism environment to extend across a more extended environment, to add additional capabilities through AI and machine learning to help do capacity planning and predictive resource allocation. Files adds more analytics as your file needs grow. And Calm is a application lifecycle management tool, allows you to blueprint applications so they're easy to set up as sort of on-demand applications that help manage the deployment of those applications. And then as we move into the multi-cloud environment, we have our enterprise products. Volumes and buckets are, again, file management capabilities, volumes for block-oriented file systems, and buckets for object-oriented, object-based files storage. Carbon is a Kubernetes container management platform. XiIoT is a cloud-based Internet of Things environment. One thing that's interesting about XiIoT, and I'll have another slide on this later, but the way we designed it is, one of the challenges with IoT is many organizations or many technologies kind of collect that data from all those internet devices and then bring them on premise to do bring them into the cloud perhaps to do the analysis, or bring them someplace to collect that data. What we designed with XiIoT is the ability to run a lot of the compute out at the edge where the data is being collected, and then optimize the amount of information that really needs to travel across the network into the cloud or to the on-premise environment. Now, Era is a database management platform. XiFrame is desktops as a service capabilities. XiEpic is application performance monitoring, and XiBeam is a technology to help do cost optimization and security management within a multi-cloud environment. XiLeap is our cloud-based disaster recovery capability. I'm going to cover a couple of these things. Like I mentioned multi-cloud and Beam. One of the challenges that customers have is as they move into that multi-cloud environment, the real hard question is, where is the best place to run those applications? We've seen some customers that leapt ahead into a public cloud environment and realized that their applications consume more resources because they really weren't cloud ready. They did a lift and shift and dropped them into a VM and found that they were, it cost more money than they expected. So then the challenge was, how do you repatriate those applications back on premise? But the ultimate question is, where's the best place to run that? we had a university customer in Southern California that had already started using Nutanix to do some of their data center modernization, but they found that with the public cloud side, it was sort of the Wild West. They were a lot of organizations that were using, were just, departments might be buying a VM and starting to run things out in the cloud, very easy to do, but they found that they were leaking a lot of dollars. So they used Zybeam to really get a better handle on their spending and to look at what was running out in the cloud. They found that some VMs were just being provisioned. They were sitting there just spinning and eating up dollars, weren't really being used. They didn't really want to completely kill them, but they were able to do some things to help manage that. The Zybeam application technologies allow us to really look at performance optimization across multiple clouds and determine whether it needs to run, if it's on Amazon, whether it would be better served to run on Microsoft Azure or to run on premise on the Nutanix Enterprise Cloud. And so these two examples here show, a couple of different cases. In one case, AWS was the best place to run it, and the other case in the back, it was Nutanix that was the results of the analysis. I have another screenshot here just to show kind of a summary. Some cases, the decision, the advice that Beam gives is to migrate the application from one environment to another. In other cases, it might tell you just ways that you could optimize within the given environment. If that's readable, it's kind of small print. I did want to mention too, we're seeing digital workspaces as a big trend. We see it in any kind of environment where there are lots of end users, whether that's a state agency or a county agency with lots of social services. We have one customer here in Southern California that's a very large healthcare provider, public healthcare provider. They have 6,000 users connected into their VDI system. They actually reported that they had a problem over the holidays, the Christmas holidays, and it wasn't particularly obvious, but because they got an alert that they lost power in half of their data center, but the Nutanix infrastructure kept them going at a little bit of reduced capacity, but the worst thing people saw was just a little bit of lag, or they needed to do a refresh. So, good story for us. But again, the point was that they were able to deliver health services to a population, a community of 6,000 caregivers that really had an impact on public health. We've seen also the growth in cloud-based desktops as a service. This is particularly relevant. We've seen some of the academic institutions moving to this model. It gives a very clean way to deploy the technologies. I think DR and COOP have been mentioned in other presentations, but I wanted to present a couple of different use cases we had here. Coral Gables, Florida is on Hurricane Alley. They as a city government wanted to make sure that their citizens were protected in the event of some sort of disaster. So they used the capabilities within the Nutanix core capabilities to create a disaster recovery model to create the replication so that they could continue to provide emergency services to their citizens in the event of a natural disaster. And then in Pennsylvania, Avon Grove Public Schools started using our cloud-based XyLeap product to provide disaster recovery. And, the truth is in these type of environments, they're depending a lot on new technologies, Chromebooks, and IT as ways of delivering learning to their students. It's important to have a backup mechanism, a disaster recovery mechanism. I included a couple case studies here, more detail there, but I'll just leave that for the handout. I mentioned XyIoT and smart cities. This is a screenshot from XyIoT's kind of probably in the news right now with a lot of organizations that are concerned about privacy. and the use of that. But the reality is that technologies like this can provide a very valid public service. And again, with our IoT technology, we do a lot of the computing out on the edge and then consolidate that centrally on the cloud or on premise. I mentioned smart cities too as a trend, and one thing that is interesting, I did kind of group this in with IoT, but for me, I've worked in this area for a while, and I think that that smart cities really can take a broader view. I've talked to one of our customers in Florida a couple of weeks ago, that a transportation agency, and they initially didn't think that they would be considered smart cities, but they in their projects. But when I talked to them in a little bit more detail, they actually are doing a lot of things with autonomous vehicles. One of their missions is moving the public through the city efficiently. That helps the economy. It helps the quality of life of their citizens. And so they're very involved in smart cities projects, but they didn't really consider them smart cities projects as a point of fact. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip through mobility. I just have this slide here that shows sort of the two things that I saw going on here. One is the growth of e-rentals for scooters or bicycles. It's growing like an explosion. The slide on the right, the picture on the right is actually from a couple of years ago. I was in Hanoi, and sort of the downside of that explosion where you have just mass use of that technology. That's very important for cities to get a handle on, and I think that's where some of the IoT data will come into helping inform some of the policies around mobility. I'll skip I'm going to, for the sake of time, I think I'm pretty much at the end of my time, so I'm going to just include these other case studies here. I did want to point out the Enterprise Cloud Index is something that we have up on our website. I invite you guys to take a look at that and sort of see where you fit in your migration of your own data center and where some of your peers may have considered the use of cloud or the use of multi-cloud. And that's the end of my slides. I have a couple other slides that are included here. I included in the handout as well, just to kind of give a bit more detail of our use cases and our product descriptions.
Yeah, great presentation, Tim. I really like how you honed in on the unique needs of state, local, and educational and government institutions. So thank you for that great presentation. We do have a few questions, time for just a few questions. And while we do that, I see we already have the slide up here. What additional information would you like about the Nutanix solution? So we'll just leave that up. First question that came in, they're asking about trends that you're seeing. I mean, you talk to these types of organizations every day. What type of advice would you give considering the trends that you're seeing?
Well, I think the advice that I have, and this is sort of, do as I say, not as I do. I think data-driven decision-making can't be overrated. I think a lot of companies sort of see the advantages of cloud and sort of assume that these, the benefits are always going to be there for the environment. And as I showed in some of the earlier slides, it's important to do the due diligence and look at, what do you really want to move to the cloud? What do you really want to accomplish? Are your workloads dynamic in a way that you can take advantage of the peaks and valleys and the on-demand kind of capacity that cloud gives you? Or are you a little bit more stable in your environment? And, in the case of one of the examples I showed on ROI, their revenues were fairly stable. Their needs for particular environments weren't growing up, weren't affected by seasonality necessarily. So they found that using CapEx dollars and running it within their own confines of the data center were more advantageous than the cloud. And I think it's just important to do that due diligence and to also understand we had another customer I just talked to last week out of in the UK. They were they decided to move a lot of their stuff. Their plan was to just refresh the data center. They were they knew they were running on old equipment. They needed to do a refresh, but the plan was just to move everything over to the cloud. And without thinking through that, they found that a lot of applications weren't necessarily cloud ready. So it was a lift and shift and required a lot more resources to run in the cloud than they had anticipated. So I think it's important to look at what you have, to try to, as much as possible, make sure you've done the virtualization steps, you've done the application analysis to really make sure they are cloud ready before you make that leap. And then use tools like Beam to look at where to best operate those environments and use that as an ongoing tool to keep your environment optimized.
Okay, excellent. Another question here. Erickson just wrote in and said, can Nutanix Acropolis be used? I think the question here is really, what hardware can we run Nutanix Acropolis on? Do they have to buy the hardware from Nutanix, or is there an HCL that it can run on?
Actually, we started out with our own platform originally back in 10 years ago, but Nutanix is a software-driven solution, so we have a number of providers that we work with. We recently announced a big relationship with HPE, but we run on Dell. We run on really the hardware of customer's choice, so not a hardware limitation at all.
Okay, perfect.
One of the other things too, and we see this in I see it more on the federal side, but we even have tactical platforms. Or for first responders that need data center capabilities out in the field, out in a remote site. In here in California, I'm based in McLean, Virginia, but I'm out here in California this week. And with all the heat, I remember the fires last year. Sometimes it might be necessary to try to use kind of that mobile data center, and we have tactical platforms as well that we work with OEM partners to run the Nutanix environment on those environments as well.
Oh, that's very interesting. Actually, I just learned that, so I didn't know that before. So I bet a lot of the folks on this event today would be interested in that as well. Specialized platforms for those specialized use cases. Tim, it looks like that's all the time we have for our Q&A session here, but it's been really great, and I really appreciate your presentation. Thanks for being on the event today.
Thank you.
For more information on Nutanix, of course, check out the handout that's available for download right there. It's a brief on how to create simpler IT for more agile government. So make sure that you check out that. It's very informative. And with that, it's time for our next Amazon $500 gift card giveaway. We have a gift card going out to Zachary Kramer from Washington. Congratulations, Zachary Kramer from Washington. We've got 2 more gift cards to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for those prize drawings. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the next presenter on today's event. That is Mr. Jeff Melnick, Netrix Solutions Engineer at Netrix. Jeff, how you doing?
Good, David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being on the event. Take it away.
Well, hey, thanks a lot. So I think we're going to start off first with is a quick poll. So let me see if I can just kind of a quick overview. We really like to get a better handle as far as what our customers are looking for, what people in general are looking for. That's kind of our company philosophy to try to determine, make sure our products meet what people are looking for. We like to build things that are cool. However, we would like to build things that are more useful to you as well. So always looking for kind of a general idea as far as what people's main concerns are. So just looking up some of the polling, I'll let this roll along for a minute or two, and or a few more moments. I don't want to waste too much time. We've got a fairly limited space, but see a lot of data breach, data loss, et cetera. Those seem to be the leading 2 at this point. So that's cool. So let me jump right in here. I'm going to dive in a little bit further. Let everyone see this. Normally let's go a little longer, but I've got a short period of time. So again, just want to dive in a little bit, talk about personal data, of really keeping data safe, no matter who it is really the main philosophy here. That's basically what we do at Networks. There have been a huge number of data breaches. These are SLED-specific data breaches, but it doesn't really take too much effort to see this in the news pretty much on a regular basis. Most of our goals is really to make sure we're not one of those people in the news, unfortunately. So, again, major concern, not a big surprise that this was sort of number one on most people's radar. So what are some of the main challenges? Back in kind of the heyday of IT, we all had, really large staffs. We had a lot of guys sitting around taking up space. That really hasn't been the case in quite a while. And trying to go through, especially from an audit perspective and a security perspective, is a little bit challenging, especially on things like not only staff, but also budget. So why Networks? For those of you who are not familiar with this, I'll actually dive into the product a little bit. I'd really like to show you the product. I'm not a huge slide guy, but one of the things we do is we're able to give you much more visibility into your environment. We're able to turn around that value very, very quickly, really cut down the manpower requirements that are needed for turning around things like audit, looking into your security posture. We have a very non-intrusive architecture, very broad and deep coverage, which I'll show in just a few moments. We also have quite a few integrations as well. So ServiceNow, Slack. We do have a RESTful API that is bidirectional. We also have pretty top-notch support. So we have support located right where I am actually here in Columbus, Ohio, as well as our European offices. So quite a bit of interest around trying to get that information out to you. Let me see. There we go. So what are some of the data security challenges that you have? You're probably familiar with this sort of closed loop: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Really, the first piece is determining what information that you have, where is it sensitive, who has access to it, clamping down on that, and also going through and again determining who's actually accessing the data. Can I go through and again make sort of informed decisions based on this information? See, hey, is there a breach? Hopefully the answer is no, but do I have the tools to be able to report on that information quickly? That's one of the big things, obviously, with incidents is determining obviously the severity, what's out there. Many of the data breaches you see, it can take them months to figure out what's actually going on. It can take them months to figure out that they've been breached. Obviously, that's a critical issue. Also, regulatory compliance automation. If you're on this webcast for SLED, you probably are dealing with one or more compliance regulations. And we do quite a bit around auditing and compliance for a variety of different platforms. So really, again, designed to turn that information around, get it out very, very quickly without having to kill yourself to go through and build a lot of custom scripts or dig into things like event logs, et cetera. Some of our customers, this is sort of obligatory customer slide. We've got a lot of customers, including in the SLED. So a lot of other verticals as well, as you can imagine, pretty much anybody with an IT department and looking to sort of safeguard some of their data. We have probably one of the largest coverages for visibility. We can look at things like, and I'll show you a little bit of this today, things around Active Directory, Windows servers. We can do baselining reports, file servers, who's accessing data, who has access to data, looking for sensitive information. We haven't forgotten the cloud, so we can look at not only SharePoint Online and Exchange Exchange and SharePoint on-prem, but also online, Azure AD, etc. We also, if you were listening just prior to this one, to the Nutanix, we also support Nutanix, so we are a Nutanix partner. So if you're looking at who has access to your Acropolis file shares, we can offer that visibility to you. Who's accessing that data? Who's moving that data, deleting it, etc. It's kind of nice to know if someone goes in and deletes a lot of files, or if a lot of files are suddenly encrypted. That's usually information you want sooner rather than later. And we also have data discovery and classification, where we can go through whether it be structured or unstructured data, looking for sensitive PII data, PCI data, all kinds of stuff. And I'll dive into that as time allows also. So let me do this. Let me share my screen. There's probably a little bit of a lag, which in case I'll apologize. But hopefully you can see my screen. If not, hopefully David will chime in and say, hey, you're doing this wrong. But real quick, just just wanted to go through and give you a quick overview of some of our capabilities and what we really can do around reporting and auditing. So from a reporting-only perspective, again, we support a variety of different platforms. And before I dive down into this, Active Directory, et cetera, you'll notice we also have a large number of compliance-ready reports as well. So again, things like CGIS, FERPA, FISMA, NIST, et cetera. There are also a series of mapping documents as well. Actually, I've got one up already. And what these basically do is it gives you kind of a quick overview of some of the different controls. So this one's specific for FISMA. And if I'm looking for something like, hey, access control, it's actually going to give you a listing of all the different reports that fall in under account management, for example. So user account changes, status changes, recently re-enabled accounts under Active Directory, Oracle, Azure AD. This will include things like predefined reports that we recommend, or predefined alerts, rather, that we recommend also. The idea is to be able to get this installed very quickly and have it start spitting data out for you very quickly. Again, we really want to turn this around. We don't want this to be a huge deployment nightmare for you. We want it to start spitting out data as quickly as possible. So let me give you a quick overview of the types of data you can grab out of here. So around things like Active Directory, I can do just kind of a quick changes report. It's pretty basic. And you're going to see there's quite a bit of detail in here. So I've got a modified group. It's the domain admins. It was changed by this guy here on basically yesterday. It's going to give you the domain controllers changed against, the source workstation, again, all the details of these as well. So what users were added. Here I added an OU, removed a couple of machines. Again, just some basic before and after attributes. And there's all different types of sorts and filters, and I can export this and subscribe to it, etc. So I can have these reports run out very, very quickly and find out what's going on. I won't run all of these because I have a limited amount of time, but again, almost all of these are driven from security and compliance, things like administrative group membership changes, etc. Now, not only do we see things like changes, but also what's going on currently. So if I need to do a monthly report on changes made to administrative groups, that's awesome, but what if I now want to go through and look at current memberships of administrative groups? I can also do that. Really any groups, account operators, domain admins, any group with HR in the name, etc. And it's very easy to subscribe to these as well. Attach it to an email, upload it to a file share, specify who it goes to, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, Mondays and Thursdays, and then you can set filters as well. So not only is this a great tool from a compliance perspective, but I can very easily send semi-customizable reports if I want to send a monthly or quarterly report to my HR director telling them who has access to their resources and has access to their files, for example. So a lot of really interesting information in this case. These are pretty basic reports. There's also a bunch of graphical reports. There are some more sort of tabular reports as well. This one looks at logons, successful and failed, which was probably one of my more favorite reports, dropping this into a client's environment and then seeing what comes out. You have no idea how many dictionary attacks we've kind of spoiled inside of a customer's environment with this report, where they've got tens of thousands of pages of thousands of failed logons for a variety of logons like Bob, Betty, Ann, etc. Let me pop out of here. We can also do things like who is accessing into your file server. So we can do a lot of not only changes to Windows servers, but also things like, if I go through here, I can do things like baseline reports as well around things like Windows servers, who's currently a member of the local admins group, etc. So instead of having to go out and pull all that data manually or using a script, I can pull all that in very quickly. Hey, does it match this baseline? I can customize the baseline, etc. I can also drill down into these machines as well, see things like services, scheduled tasks, what's, again, local users and groups, what current file shares, all kinds of cool stuff. We can even do recording, video recording on workstations and servers. So some pretty cool stuff around there as well. And then if I want to go in and do some more queries, obviously I can do a ton of reports. There's probably 200 plus reports, but let's say I want to do maybe something along the lines of, hey, I want to see everything this guy has done in some time frame. Maybe he's a Windows Server administrator, right? So I can also specify something like a wild, just a string of text. So I want to say, hey, any record with this guy in the last year that has permissions somewhere here. And I can further refine this. I can drop into advanced mode, etc. But I can also use the records to include or exclude data as well. So let's say, for example, here there's a lot of file server changes. So I'm going to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to exclude this. And now I want to see what this guy's done kind of outside of the scope of what his normal work is. So here, for example, I've got a security delegation in AD, a couple site changes in SharePoint, again, another security delegation, and then a couple of shares that were created and deleted. So it allows you to pull in all the data across all these platforms, whether you're using AD, file servers, Nutanix, NetApp, SQL, etc. All of this can be pulled in. And from here, you can go through and you kind of create custom reports. Hey, that's really useful information. I'd like to know more about that. Or you can create custom alerts as well. You kind of filter these out, specify thresholds. It by default will drop the filters right in here. So you can very easily go through and customize these. Hey, I want to see changes just for specific groups, just for specific people within certain working hours, etc. You can specify thresholds. So again, for things like large numbers of logons, large numbers of file changes, those are pretty common. You can also set a risk score, which I'll dive in and show you briefly if I have a chance, and then you can also set a response action as well. And this is how our ServiceNow integration works. It's also how we integrate with Slack, and you can do some other security orchestration tools in here as well. So we can go out and call a very, very basic script. Hey, I want to reset this guy's account because a large number of file changes have taken place, or it can be something much more interesting that you can really have it go in and dig in. There's, again, a lot of visual reports around things like behavior anomalies, where I can see, hey, there's a large number of changes either made by date or by user. I can drill into these, and it really works well for going through and kind of customizing a lot of your alerts as well. One of the big complaints we get just in general is people tend to get very few alerts because they don't turn them on, or they're getting bludgeoned with alerts. And so this tool is really designed to help you cut through a lot of that and dig into that in more detail as well. As I mentioned, you can even do some discovery and classification around a bunch of different platforms. So if you're looking for sensitive data, I can go in there and I can do that pretty easily. I can even build things like workflows. So if I go in here in my accounting and my HR directories, it makes sense that I have some PCI and some, PII data, etc. But down here in my public directory, not so much. So this is probably data that should not just be floating around in this case. So again, it gives me a lot more visibility into where this data is. There's a lot of built-in sort of taxonomies. Again, we cover a lot of different platforms on the data discovery and classification side as well. And I'll kind of show this as well, to be able to go through and crawl data from just a host of different sources. And there are a bunch of built-in taxonomies as well. It also allows you to go through and search for data as well. So, for example, all these are kind of out of the box. Just kind of select HIPAA. And then one of the things you can do is, especially with things like GDPR, CCPA, et cetera, one of the requirements is to go out and find data. Not just sensitive data, but find specific kinds of data. So in this case, if I want to go out and look for something like, hey, I want to see everything associated with this user, I can actually do that pretty quickly. And here's a text file that has her name and her birth date, RTF file with actually some MasterCard data, and then here is actually a JPEG. So we have OCR capabilities as well. So if you're onboarding people and you're putting those JPEGs somewhere where you're scanning their social security card, their passport, their driver's license, you probably want to know where that data is located and make sure it's not falling someplace that it shouldn't be. So again, really designed to go through and give you some really neat visibility in this case as far as what's actually going on. So I'm going to stop the screen share and I'm going to try to pause real quick before I get the hook. There we go. So there should be quite a bit of information as well that you'll include here. You can download the product. You can play around with your test environment. You can actually do, this is kind of cool, you just drive through the browser to give you kind of a walking tour through it, through the products. You can kind of play around with it and get to know the interface a little bit, et cetera. So with that having been said, I apologize if I went a little bit too quick, but hopefully you guys have found this interesting, and I will see if there are any questions.
excuse me, there are some questions for you here, Jeff. While we pop up those questions, I'm going to show this poll to the audience, and we'll just leave that up there. It says, what additional information would you like about the Netrix solution? So I'll just leave that on the screen for everyone to answer. And I know, Jeff, you mentioned the demo. I also want to point out that the link to that demo is in the handouts section. For anyone out there, if you click on handouts, and right there, the fourth link or the fourth resource down is the Netrix demo. If you click on that, that will pop up the website where you can give this a try for yourself with that demo. So make sure you check that out. So let's see, first question that came in, Erickson is asking, do we need to install agents on the clients to be monitored by Netrix Audit?
So for the most part, no. That screen capture, which I didn't really get a chance to show you, is the only one that requires an agent. We're very big into agentless technology. Agents can work very well, but they tend to be very intrusive and they can cause major issues. If you've ever gone through a Windows update and had a bunch of machines get blue screened out, you know what I'm talking about. So for the most part, we try to avoid agents, and we use a combination of mechanisms to pull that data together. And we do actually quite a bit of correlation on the back end. So for something like Active Directory, we'll look at things like logs, but we also look at the directory structure itself and a couple of other streams of data, pull all of that together, and then we do all the heavy lifting on the network server itself because we think your domain controllers should be doing things like authenticating users, for example. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great answer. I'm glad we don't have to install agents. Next question here, they're asking, how customizable is the alerting on Netrix Auditor? For example, can you set a number of fails before it triggers an alert?
Yeah, you can definitely do thresholding. You can also do things like, hey, I only want this to be triggered if it is between these certain hours. You can do something like, hey, I want to trigger this unless it's one of these users or someone within this group. So, for example, if I've got something like, hey, I've got administrative password resets, I'm probably not concerned about those if it's coming from my help desk group. If it's coming from somebody else, that's a bigger concern. So you can definitely do some thresholding as well. And again, those are very popular with things like failed logons, large numbers of file server changes, file server deletions, all kinds of really neat use cases. So they're very, very customizable.
Nice. Okay. Next question, can Netrix be implemented seamlessly with AWS environments and legacy data centers? And what about if you have multiple AD or LDAP masters? Kind of a long question there.
So the answer is yes. So we're definitely cloud-enabled. It's really just an application. It can be installed on-premise. It can be installed in the cloud as well. So it exists up in like the Azure Marketplace. I believe it's in the AWS Marketplace as well, where really we recommend installing it wherever most of your architecture is, or your infrastructure is, rather. So that's relatively easy. We can pull in multiple domains, multiple forests. As long as we can reach them, there doesn't need to be a trust. So as long as we can get to those domains and we have credentials to pull that data, we can certainly work with as many different architectures as possible.
Okay, nice. What about licensing? They're asking, how's this product licensed?
So it's licensed by the number of enabled AD users. That's kind of the baseline that we use. There's obviously discounting around SLED. There's discounting for a variety of other stuff as well. I'm not a sales guy, so they won't give me the actual numbers, but feel free to call, and that's kind of the baseline that we use. And again, if you have a large number of service accounts or something like that, it's really going to be more around kind of heartbeats as well. So every environment's a little bit different, and we are willing to work with you a little bit as well, especially for you have some more odd infrastructure, and I know some organizations and some verticals do.
Yeah, nice. I was just looking on the website here, actually, and I have a question for you. So I see there's all these different Netrix Auditor editions for Active Directory, for Windows servers, for VMware, for Office 365, and Nutanix Files, which is really cool. Are those sold as different editions, or is it still just licensed per seat, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's correct. So basically, it's kind of a la carte, if you will. If you want to buy several, obviously there's discounting built in there as well. But if you said, hey, I just want to be able to monitor my Nutanix, Acropolis file shares, that's totally cool. Just AD, multiple, it really is more of a pay for what you're interested in, more so than anything else. So if you're into VMware and Active Directory, for example, that's all you need to pay for. So.
Okay, nice. Another question they're asking, can this help us with PCI compliance?
Definitely. There's 12 kind of out-of-the-box compliances right in the product, actually, where, again, you can go in and pull up some of the mappings very, very easily. There is a bunch of additional data out on the website as well. So there's stuff out there for the New York's, it's not the New York Safe Act, it's whatever the New York Financial Act is as well, CCPA, all the other ones, and several of those will be added in as well. So all of the sort of either international or really large national compliances are kind of baked into the product where it's very easy to assess. But you can also go to the website for a host of additional compliances that are either not quite as well known or that are more regionalized as well. So.
Okay, excellent. And I was just looking here on the website. It looks like there's a 20-day free trial, and then there's also an in-browser demo that people can try out and just try it immediately.
Correct.
Looks very easy to get started. Well, that's all we have time for in our live Q&A session, but really great presentation, Jeff. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Hey, thanks a lot, David. Thank you all. Take care.
And for more information on Netrix, give it a try. Click that link right there in the Handouts tab and try out the in-browser demo for yourself. You don't even have to install anything, or if you want to install something in a lab environment, there's a 20-day free trial, and you can see how it works for yourself. And with that, it's time for our next Amazon $500 gift card prize giveaway. That gift card is going to Jeff Noel from Colorado. Congratulations, Jeff Noel from Colorado. We've got one more $500 gift card to give away after our next presentation, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm excited to introduce the next presenter on today's EcoCast. That is Mr. Dick Sappler, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Unitrends. Dick, are you on?
I am. Thank you, David.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. As David said, my name is Dick Sappler. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Unitrends. And prior to joining Unitrends, I was an industry analyst for the Aberdeen Group based in Boston. So I come to this from a long line of experience in IT, and very happy to be working for a vendor, particularly one as robust and as senior as Unitrends. So I know that most of you may not really know who we are, so I thought we would start off by introducing who we are. Unitrends has been in business for over 30 years. We invented many of the basic technologies of backup, including bare metal recovery and restores. We're the leader in all-in-one appliances, and currently we have about 30,000 customers worldwide. We protect literally 2 exabytes of customer data, and we have 100 petabytes in our cloud. Our cloud's located around the world, and we're very proud of our 98% customer satisfaction rating, as it really supports our focus on the customer. Specifically, we literally have thousands of government and educational customers. I've written many customer success stories. They're on our website, but you see just a few of them here. Mississippi Department of Revenue, City of San Jose, the Virginia Lottery, police stations, one near me, Barnstable, but we have literally thousands of SLED-type customers. So in the writing of, let me take a step back here and talk about disaster recovery and what are the real threats to your environment. And this is some work that I did when I was an industry analyst, basically polling organizations and asking them to identify the causes of downtime. And downtime can also mean data loss, but it certainly means lost productivity on the part of your user environment. And I'm sure you're used to hearing backup vendors talking about floods and fires and pestilence and locust plagues and so forth. But you can see from this that those sorts of natural disasters really account for a very small percentage of the downtime that you're likely to experience. The number one cause, as always, almost always the case, stupid human tricks, human error, misconfiguring routers, turning off servers inappropriately, and number two, software issues, installing untested patches or upgrades that break the software, and then the software version has to be rolled back. The third is server room issues, loss of power supplies, the failure of universal power recovery units, and so forth. So amongst those three, you're accounting for almost 2/3 of the causes of downtime. So whatever solution you choose to protect your data, protect your organization from downtime, it has to protect against this wide variety of causes of downtime. Micro issues all the way up to macro issues such as the disasters and recovery, fires and pestilence that we were talking about. So I have written extensively about state and local governments, and they really are unique in the industry. There are 5 major attributes that I found after talking to many state SLED accounts. One, government records and the files in their applications need to be accessible 7/24. I know I'm not informing anybody anything new here, but more so than almost any other industry, the government needs to be up and running 7/24. Police, fire, dispatch, courts, all those sorts of organizations need access to their data all the time. And as a result, SLED organizations are really an object of attack. Ransomware, malware, and all very much go after SLED-type organizations. IT and your departments, your IT departments, have to compete for funding with every other initiative inside of the government. And many times the IT department is the last one to actually get funded. So as a result, your apps, your hardware, and all are kept well past the advertised useful life of the products. And and many times when I've gone into data centers for SLED organizations, it looks like a museum of examples of servers and storage devices that have been retired in for-profit enterprises. And the last element that you need to be aware of is that you're supporting large numbers of unsophisticated users. People can do silly things and therefore can inadvertently bring down files, can destroy data, and all. So all of these things need to be part of any solution for backing up and recovering a SLED organization. So really it all starts with server data backup and recovery. And this is an image of our recovery series appliance. This is a 2U device that you put inside of your data center. And what it does is basically manages and stores your data backup and recovery process. So you literally go into the user interface and set the replication schedule that you want to have for your data. And you can do it, you can target particular files or particular applications with backups every 2 hours. There are other files that may not be as critical, or the change rate on the data may not be so high, so you can do that once a day. And the way the appliance works is the first backup is a full backup. So we copy every piece of data, including the operating systems, the applications, the networking settings, the server settings, basically your entire software stack, so that we can replicate your entire environment right on the box. Then every backup is an incremental from then on in. So those backups tend to be very fast, very small, and are easily moved around your network without having any sort of negative impact. So that if you have a local issue on a server inside the data center, you can instantly bring up that entire server's application set on the appliance and run it there for as long as you need to do it, giving you time to gracefully repair the server or to bring in a new server. So it's not best-in-class practice, but we've actually had a county up in Michigan run an application on our appliance for 3 months until his new budget kicked in and he was able to buy a replacement server. So the appliance then really is a restoration site for your applications. Now, at the same time, every single backup is replicated out the back of the box to either a remote location or up into the cloud. It's your choice, and most of the county, state, and local governments that I deal with, they're geographically spread far enough so that they can actually have the secondary site, their remote backup site, at a school or a town facility on the other side of town. So you can have a box there, or you can have a software version of our operating system, of our appliance, so that if the entire data center goes down, then you can bring it back up in the remote site almost instantaneously, because you have the latest versions of the backups, the full application stack at the remote site as well. The other thing our appliance does, you can recover a file within 5 minutes from log on to full restoration to the user with our system. You don't have to, because the entire software stack is in there. All you need to understand is the server where it used to be housed. You go in and look at the file structure just as it was designed by the user, and literally point out the files you want and drag and drop them into the user account. So literally, this is a job that haunts most IT people in local governments, unsophisticated users deleting files that they need and then discovering them later after the wastebasket has been emptied. We also do automated ransomware detection of every backup. We look in the file to see if there's any sort of ransomware activity, and if there is, we automatically alert you to that and flag that backup so that you don't try to use it in recovery. We natively protect over 250 operating systems, hypervisors, applications, so that no matter what you're using, whether it's still protected by the original vendor, once it's on our compatibility matrix, we protect it. So we're protecting many versions of operating systems that have been retired by the vendors. And finally, you can set up an entire software test environment to do test and dev on patches and make sure that you bring it up. So I apologize for the long-winded speech on that one particular slide, but that appliance literally addresses all of the features that I highlighted as far as what you need in order to work with you in your environment. The other thing that's becoming very popular with state and local governments is the use of SaaS-based applications. So applications that are running in the cloud where you don't actually have to run them on your own servers and storage. So I'm talking specifically about Office 365 and Google G Suite. You are as responsible for protecting the data in the cloud as you are protecting the data that's in the servers in your local on-premise data center. Microsoft has a shared responsibility model. They will protect for things such as the application, operating system, any network issues, server failures, and so forth. But you as the customer are responsible for protecting your own data, what the users do, and the docs and so forth. So if a customer, one of your users deletes a file, it goes into your wastebasket, and then once the wastebasket is emptied, say every 14 or 30 days, depending on how you have the settings, that data is lost forever. There is nothing that Microsoft can do to bring it back. So you need to have a SaaS application protection product. And what we do is we literally take a snapshot of your entire mailbox, all of your contacts, your calendar, OneDrive, SharePoint, and we keep that image into perpetuity for as long as you have a contract with us. And so literally the end users themselves can go back and self-restore a folder by just going back to the folder for the date that they last remember having that email or contact or PowerPoint presentation. So very effective way of protecting those applications, and just as necessary that you provide that for your users. And then finally, the ultimate form of protection is what's called disaster recovery as a service. This is where you replicate your backups into the Unitrends cloud and then we work with you to bring your entire application set up and operating in the cloud under very, very short time periods. So we offer what we call white glove services, where we do all the work. You don't have to become a cloud expert. All you have to do is contract with us at a very affordable rate. We do all the testing, we do all the setup, and then literally with a single phone call, you call us and tell us that if you have a disaster situation, we bring your environment up, and then we send an SSL VPN to your users, which redirects them to their applications running in our cloud. You can then run your entire operation up in our cloud for up to 30 days at no extra cost. This is a far easier and far less expensive solution than Amazon or AWS. Those are very, very complex, demanding applications. You have to deal with up to 19 different screens in order to actually manage a failover. And if you have a true disaster in your data center, you're literally you're going to lose your internet access, so you're not going to be able to manage that failover. So with us, just call us on the phone. We do the entire failover. We redirect your users, and then we give you up to 30 days to repair your data center so that you can then gracefully fail your users back when the disaster is over. So let me show you a couple of things that's specific about DRAS, because this is something that is this is a tool that's being adopted by more and more state and local governments and educational organizations. First is, since we do the work, we are willing to give you a service level agreement. We are guaranteeing recovery of your applications, and if we don't hit our window, we pay you back. So there are 3 levels of DRAS. There's premium. What premium means is that we guarantee your applications are up and running in 1 hour, and we do weekly recovery testing and send you the results of that so that you can tell that we are following up and that our ability to recover your files is absolutely guaranteed. We say 1 hour. The longest we've actually had to bring an application up and operating is 18 minutes, and that was a very complex application that ran on 5 servers, and most of that 18 minutes was actually server boot time. You can also go elite, which means that we guarantee recovery in 24 hours. We do monthly testing. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't recover for 24 hours. What it really means is that we do all the premium recoveries first, and then we turn to the elites. And the reason we set these 2 levels is because we're concerned that with the hundreds and hundreds of customers we have doing disaster recovery as a service across the United States, if there was a large hurricane coming up the East Coast, and literally we were dozens and dozens of calls to fail over, we'd need to be able to prioritize which applications to go up first and then which to bring up next. And then finally, the third offering is what we call standard. This is a bulk DRAS offering. It's sold in 500 gig increments, and so we'll bring up as many applications as you have within that 500 gigs on a best effort basis after the premium and the lead are taken care of. So again, we perform. You don't have a risk. We guarantee our performance. This is something you'll never get from Azure or AWS. Secondly, as I told you about, automated recovery testing. With the guarantees, we will do weekly and monthly testing. We will actually bring the entire application set up, and then we'll perform tests on the applications to ensure that they're fully performing. At the end, we will send you a report that will show you the actual boot times, whether they meet your RPO and RTO objectives, and the results of any tests. If there are issues, there will be the findings will be included in that report, and then we'll work together to get those resolved before the next test. Next, we are a single service organization based in Charleston, South Carolina. So no matter what your backup or disaster recovery issue you have, it's one call. Whether it's the appliance, whether it's the settings, whether it's the cloud, whether it's the DRAS, you don't have to try to figure that out. You just call us. Literally, one of our engineers answers the phone. Most changes are fixed within the first call. And as I said, we have a 98% customer satisfaction rating that we're very, very proud of and invite you to try us. And so for the month of June, we know that this is the end of your budget calendar. So what we're offering is a promotion that we will automatically upsize your recovery, Unitrends Recovery Series appliance to the next large size free of charge. So if you were going to buy, for example, our 8 terabyte appliance, we will automatically upgrade you to our 12 terabyte appliance for no additional charge. You have to buy the years of support, and but this is for new or existing state and local government and education customers. There is an offer sheet that's in the handout section of this webcast. You can take a look at the details. They're all spelled out there. But this expires at the end of June, so I encourage you to get moving on that quickly. So with that, that ends my formal presentation part, and so I'll turn back to get the question and answers.
Awesome. Great presentation, Dick. Let's see. We do have some questions here for you. While we do that, I'm going to bring up this poll question for the audience, which is, what additional information would you like about the Unitrends solution? I'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So let's see. First question they're asking about is, where are your clouds located?
Okay, that probably means that we have somebody from Canada on the call. We have 3 cloud locations in the United States, 1 in Canada, 1 in the UK, Germany, and Australia. We guarantee that, Mr. Canada, your information will be kept in Canada and not sent to the United States, and vice versa. We'll keep the information in the United States if you so wish. We also offer business associate agreements. If you are involved with healthcare and you need HIPAA certification, we're also certified for PCI and SOX and many of the other compliance requirements that are available in the industry.
Okay, excellent. And with Unitrends, does the data, is it just stored in the Unitrends cloud only, or this person is asking, do they have the option to put it in, say, like AWS or Azure?
Yes, you can direct it anywhere you wish. We do sell our software version of our appliance in the Azure and AWS store. You can use those to protect cloud workloads in AWS, or you can store your backups into the cloud and then pull them back out if you need them.
Okay, nice. Another question here. Can you back up physical servers?
Yes, we can. We, as I said, we were the ones who invented bare metal restore. So if you have physical servers, old Windows servers that you haven't virtualized because the server just doesn't have that capacity, what we do in the backup process, we will actually put them on a hypervisor inside of the inside of our appliance, and actually run them as if they were the original physical server. So we do have the ability to back up physical appliances no matter what make, Linux, Ubuntu operating systems, things like that. We're very wide in our support of multiple operating systems and so forth.
Okay, nice. And then is there a charge for bringing data back from your cloud?
No. Once you sign a contract with us for use of the cloud, that's all you pay. Every other service then is free of charge. So what this does, it makes it much easier for you to budget how much you're going to have to pay for your cloud services. With AWS and Azure, as you know, you're charged by the minute of your server. You're charged by the file for cloud storage. So for budgeting purposes, you kind of have to guess if you're going to have a disaster and put money aside for that. With us, there's no additional charge to fail over. There's no additional charge for moving data around or restoring it back down. And as I said, you can run for 30 days free of charge in our cloud, and that's per failover. That's not per year. That's per failover. So basically, it's the one charge, and then you're done.
I like that. Yeah, I analyzed a lot of different DR solutions at one point, and like you said, many of them were, it was a small monthly charge, but then when you declared a disaster, then there was an enormous charge for that sort of recovery. So I really like that design that you all have there in your pricing model. Another question here, is there a hardware version of Unitrends as well as a software-only version? And if so, how do people choose?
Okay, so the hardware appliance is literally 80 to 90% of our sales. And yes, that's the device you put in your data center. It's a 2U rack-mountable hardware appliance, and that becomes then the recovery platform as well as the manager of your restoration. If you are blessed with lots of servers and lots of storage capacity, then you can buy the software version of our appliance, put it on a server, and use that. Also, if you want to go and put the software version at the remote site, it's a little less expensive, and in the fact, it's less likely that you'll actually have to use it for a disaster. So you might get away with that. So it really comes down to if you have the spare server and compute capacity to host our software.
And that brings me to my next question, which actually was, I know a lot of, state, local government, and educational institutions, they might have kind of a central headquarters, if you will, and then in many cases they have, kind of remote offices or edge locations, as, they're being called
right.
now. In that kind of design, what would you recommend? Would you put the virtual appliance out remotely, or would you just bring the data back, or how do you typically do that?
So what we do is we would probably put an appliance at the headquarter level, and then that appliance can actually be designated the kind of queen, and then remotely monitor and manage all the other deployments within your environment. So you literally do not have to have IT people everywhere you have our software or hardware. One interface can operate up to 10,000 different of our devices. And so you probably definitely want to have a single remote, at least one remote site in a different electrical grid, different zone to make sure, and you'd replicate to that. And then from there, you could replicate up into the cloud for ultra protection. But most of the SLED organizations I know, because they're blessed geographically to have multiple locations, tend to use just physical remote sites and manage it centrally.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I like that. This question just came in from Morgan, who's asking, is the data encrypted and secured when it's in the Unitrends cloud?
Yes. So when the files are brought down onto the appliance, they are deduped, compressed, and then they can also be encrypted if you need them to be encrypted. Again, those are incremental files, so they tend to be very small, so they don't impact your WAN. So that's WAN optimization capabilities. When they come out the back of the appliance, they can be encrypted. They can be stored in the Unitrends cloud encrypted, or they can be unencrypted in the cloud, which would make it for faster recovery in the event of emergency. But it's entirely up to you what you want to do. I know if you're at all need to be HIPAA compliant, you have to be. It has to be stored encrypted, and we're capable of doing that. As I said, our cloud is HIPAA certified.
Okay, excellent. Well, Dick, I think that's all the time we have for our live Q&A session, but really great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Great, thank you.
For more information on the Unitrends solution, check out the handout that's there in your audience console. It talks about the free upgrade offer for SLED organizations, where you can supersize your backup, and it's got the top 5 reasons that you should consider Unitrends. So make sure that you check that out. And now it's time for our final gift card prize on today's event. That Amazon $500 gift card is going to Than Kim from California. Than Kim from California. Congratulations to all 5 gift card winners on today's event. I hope that you enjoy your Amazon winnings and spend them on something really cool, maybe some new cool technology. Before you go, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to all of ActualTech Media's resources over on Facebook, and specifically on our YouTube channel, and also our podcast in the iTunes store called the 10 on Tech podcast. If you go to iTunes and just type in 10 on Tech, or go to your favorite search engine and type in 10 on Tech, you can subscribe to our podcast that way. Also, I want to remind you to follow us on LinkedIn. You can do that in the Handouts tab right there. It says follow us on LinkedIn. Just click on that, or of course go to LinkedIn and type in ActualTech Media. That works as well. So we're doing a lot over there on that platform. If you're interested in sponsoring a future event and presenting, feel free to reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and we would love to chat about that. You can find out about our upcoming events on events.actualtechmedia.com. That link is also in the Handouts tab there, by the way. And then make sure you join us for our next event, which is a panel cast. It's a video discussion where we have a moderator and we chat with experts on video, live video. So that could be fun. We never know what's going to happen exactly on the live video panel cast. So make sure you join us for that. And it is next Thursday on migrating to hyperconvergence, and you can register for that at events.actualtechmedia.com. Also watch your email inbox for an invitation to that event. And with that, we've reached the end of today's state, local government, and education EcoCast event. I hope that you really learned a lot. I hope that you had a good time, and I really appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to join us on the event. I always appreciate all the generous comments from the audience. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you on the next event. Have a great day.